Yes, everyone, welcome back to Red Bull Review. I'm Julio. Recording this the morning after the Lyon second leg. Don't know yet when this is going to go out, so could be a few days after. What a night that was. What a night. I don't think I've fully calmed down. Yeah, I don't think my heart rate has settled since Harry Maguire, even since Kobe Mainoo scored. But today I'm going to be, I'm going to be doing one of three videos today, which is, looking more to United's summer business coming up, and I'm going to be looking at each of the three relegated Premier League sides and see if there's any good deals that United could be looking at to get. And considering I'm planning on doing three videos, I think you can tell that there's a few players from each relegated side, or at least each side at the bottom, in the bottom three, that I think would be a good fit, not just for United, but for a lot of Premier League sides. I think people scoff at the idea of buying from relegated sides because they played for these relegated sides. I think especially this season where the standard has been quite poor. Ipswich seemed to be the only one that had a genuine, realistic chance of staying up, and even they faltered at a point. And I think given the way United are running, they're going to be looking at deals that they can, where they're either unearthing gems or looking for some bargain prices, and that's without the idea of sell to buy. And I think over the years there has been precedent in the Premier League of these kind of deals happening. The prime example people use is Andy Robertson. Hull City to Liverpool, £7 million. I don't think anyone expected him really to, be as integral as he has been for Liverpool for the last 8 years. But then you look at other clubs like Leicester and Bournemouth, they went down, but there was noticeable talent in those sides. James Maddison and Nathan Ake, to name a couple. Even if Villa went down when Bournemouth did, Jack Grealish was an obvious name that United probably would have gone for had Villa gone down. So I think that if you look past the relegation and you read between the lines of this team, I think for each relegated side, you will see that there is talent in the team for United to look at. For this video, I'm going to be looking at Southampton, which it turns out was the harder of the three, not just because of how poor they were, but I wanted to look for, it's much more difficult to look for the less obvious ones, and I think that there wasn't really many that were absolute shoo-ins. The other sides, it was a bit easier to tell that he'll be good. So I'm going to do Southampton because obviously they were relegated, so confirmed relegation. I've made my opinions clear on Southampton during the season on other shows and other platforms, so it's absolutely dreadful this year. But I look at the team, and there are some players in the team who I think that would actually work in this United team. There's been a couple of obvious links, which made it a little bit easier to pick from Southampton. But I've gone with three names who I think would fit in. There was another player actually I did want to put in, who I'll bring up at the end, but there is a reason why I couldn't include him in this list. But yeah, with the nature of obviously the Premier League, especially with PSR now, clubs like United will be looking to seek quality and value in the transfer market, and financial constraints and player desires to stay in the top flight create these opportunities for bigger clubs to secure proven or even just potential talent at bargain prices. And I think that with the PSR rules, I think United will need to target players from the likes of Southampton. And, at the time of recording, not officially, but probably soon to be Leicester and Ipswich. So yeah, the first name I've gone for is Aaron Ramsdale, which is a bit of a controversial one for me, and I'll explain why afterwards. But when I look at the reasons why United could sign him, you know, I put a tweet out a couple of weeks ago that his Premier League record is actually quite sad. 2020 gets relegated with Bournemouth, 2021 gets relegated with Southampton, 2022, Arsenal bottles the top four with him as the first choice. 2023, Arsenal end up bottling the league with him as the first choice. Then last season, 2024, he gets benched, and then 2025 relegated with one of the worst, if not the absolute worst relegation side in history. Earliest relegation in history. I don't think it's entirely his fault, and there is some good that comes from Aaron Ramsdale, in my opinion. There is Premier League proven quality. What is he? 26 years old. Had a strong track record at Arsenal, and even though Bournemouth went down, he still had a strong track record there. He's had a very challenging season. Southampton, just a porous defense. They've just not been good defensively. Good shot stopping at Arsenal though. Experience in high pressure environments, whether it's relegation battles or even the races of whatever he's been in, whether it's been a top four race or a title race. And you could argue that those kind of things make him a significant upgrade on Onana, because Onana's inconsistency has frustrated United's supporters. And I think Ramsdale being, I will dive into the next couple of things, but Ramsdale, good shot stopper, good reflexes, and then on top of that, I'll go into the next thing, which is ball playing ability. But I think when you look at what he could offer, you could argue that he could stabilize United's back line. Amorim's system requires a sweeper keeper of some format to be comfortable with distribution, and Ramsdale ranks in the top 20% of Premier League goalkeepers for passes attempted and progressive passes, which would align with United's need for build-up play from the back. In some phases of play, Amorim needs his goalkeeper to be like an extra player in possession rather than just a goalkeeper. Did it very well at, it was clear that he could play out from the back at Bournemouth, utilised effectively at Arsenal as well. And there are links to the sides like Chelsea or West Ham, who both look for progressive goalkeepers. And I think that, based on that, I think, because there's times when United have struggled to play out from the back, not just because of the goalkeeper, but because of obviously the centre back. The central centre back is supposed to be the most comfortable in possession, and there have been times when, because of personnel, it's not been that comfortable. Like the Newcastle defeat, was a testament to that. Victor Lindelof just did not look comfortable in the centre of a back three, and caused issues for United's build-up play. There seems to be some form of leadership with Ramsdale. I'm not saying he's captain material, but he does seem to be a vocal presence, and he has shown signs of resilience. During Arsenal's title challenges, he has shown that there have been moments where, he will look to come back. He will work hard to come back from any kind of setback. And, I think he could add proper vocal presence and even leadership to United's backline. He left Arsenal because of his desire for regular minutes. But on the flip side of it, at the first opportunity, he got replaced. Arsenal saw an opportunity with David Raya and still signed him. And David Raya is a more assuring goalkeeper, not just with ball playing, but also seems to be better for the defense. And Arsenal have looked defensively solid since Raya's been in there. So it calls that into question a little bit. when I look at transfer feasibility, you know, Southampton signed him for about 18 million quid. I think there were add-ons that took it up to 25. The fact they've been relegated, you could get him for the same money. Um, and 20 to 25 million, it's realistic fees. It's not bad value for money for a goalkeeper who, you know, Arsenal paid more. I think Arsenal paid about 30 million for him, and you could see the effect he had when they first signed him. You know, in terms of fit United, I think that I think he would come in as the first choice. He would initiate attacks with precise distribution, and you know, he would actually provide some format of defensive reliability. You know, he has shown that at Arsenal, he as a goalkeeper himself is a lot better in better defensive setups, which he doesn't have at Southampton. He didn't have at Sheffield United, and another, if we're going to bring comparisons and precedents, you look at Jordan Pickford. You know, played for an abysmal Everton side for years, but under a better defensive side and structure with England, it brought the best out of him. You know, and I think his experience in the Premier League and in terms of style of play, I think it actually complements Amorim's high pressing style, and I think it might actually offer an edge over Onana's inconsistency. You know, it's quite a risky one, you know, because I feel like the goalkeeper is the last line of defense, and we've had too much of it with Onana, where when the defense isn't there, like you got to call up on the goalkeeper, and there's been plenty of times where Onana's made some silly errors, you could argue, from a goalkeeping standpoint. Not just with distribution, I'm talking with shot stopping as well. And you know, would Ramsdale be an upgrade? I don't know. Do you know what? I think Ramsdale would be a well-rounded upgrade. I think. I'm not saying he's the goalkeeper I want, but if United do look for a goalkeeper, and I don't think you can do much. It's quite a difficult one because I don't want to sit here and say he would actually be rubbish, but I don't think he's not the best, put it that way. But when I look at what happened with him at Arsenal, you know, he did improve the team, but they had a better shot stopper before him, and then they replaced him with a better shot stopper after him. But there were big moments for Arsenal where he pulled up trumps. So it's a difficult one, and I think that I do feel for him a little bit that the relegation stuff is on his CV a bit, but I just don't think that maybe he's the one to go in for. The next one is Tyler Dibbling. United have been linked with him basically all season. You know, he's been Southampton's best player until you know, what is it, 4 goals and 2 assists, I believe he's got. You know, he has fearless dribbling and directness, which is good. You know, I think the biggest issue for him this season has been since Juric has come in, he's misused him. And but he does look like a very good talent, and I feel like he would fit the right 10 role a lot better in Amorim's system. You know, the stats look good. You know, Dibbling's got 1.5 dribbles per game and 89.8% pass completion, which highlight his technical quality. A lot of teams have been looking at him. Spurs, Chelsea, Newcastle, and even Leipzig have been monitoring him. £100 million fee that Southampton put on it is absolutely unrealistic. They won't get that. I'd be surprised if United sign him for more than 30, personally. Even though if Southampton stayed up, a £40 to £60 million would be roughly where you get him. But I think the fact that Southampton have been confirmed relegated, I think 30 would probably be the max they would go, especially given it's his first season. And I think that it would highlight, obviously, Wilcox's willingness to go for a youth-focused strategy in this new Ineos board. He's got a contract going until 2027. He's not negotiating, which United could use to their advantage. Obviously, United have a history of developing younger talents, and he would require careful management. He would be brought in, I don't think, as a starter. I think he'd be that bench option that would play a lot more, and I think he's a very good talent. Um, it just depends what United want profiles wise and what they want, like in terms of how proven. Because we've been linked with Burmo, Cunha, and then the likes of Tyler Dibnick. You can't sign all these players because we've got a lot of players in United currently who play there. I think you could have Mount, Bruno, and Mainu on one side of the 10, and then you want your more shallow striker on the other side. Does Dibbling fit into that role? I'm not entirely sure, possibly, but I don't think he comes in and is an essential starter. He could, he's got dynamism, a bit of dynamism and creativity to him because he's young, and I think there is an adaptability to him. I think he fits into Amorim's high intensity system, and I actually think that maybe he could actually be molded into a right wing back potentially, but it would depend on, Amorim and how he would view him. Obviously, there's limited goal output, but because I put that down to the fact that he's been at a relegated side, and he's been misused for the majority of the season. I don't think he would start regularly, but I think he would be carefully brought into the team, I think, which would help. He's absolutely not the finished product, but United are going to look at signing not finished products and excuse me, develop them. And I think he's one of them. But United need to figure out what they're going to do with the current, because there's two. United used to play obviously a 4-2-3-1. So behind the striker, there were three positions before. Now there's only two, and you've got a lot of players you want to try and fit in there. You've got wingers who are currently out on loan. United need to ship them off. You've got players currently at the club. United might look to ship them off. So I think that I don't know if United do this deal, but I think that because he's been on their radar all season, I think that it is a deal worth exploring. Now, the next one was a bit of a wild card option, and the reason I put him in is actually because there is a link to Amorim, which is Mateus Fernandes. 20-year-old Portuguese under 21 international. What's good about him? He's got from midfield. Sorry, I just had to put my laptop back in charge. So he's got 8 goal contributions this season, which I think tops actually the whole Southampton team, which I was quite surprised about when looking into it. I didn't realize he had been, that standout. And what I like about him, there's a tireless work ethic, and in fact, he ranks in the top 10% of Premier League midfielders for tackles and progressive passes. His ability to shuttle between boxes, where addresses United's midfield issues. And I think he brings in legs which Casemiro and Eriksen seem to lack. And I think, he was a Sporting Academy graduate, and, Fernandes is familiar with Amorim's 3-4-2-1 system, making him he could be a seamless fit for the 8 or even the 10 in United's double pivot or midfield roles, like the attacking 10 roles. He has produced some good performances, and there is an ability to overload midfields, as Amorim has highlighted. So he would complement the likes of Fernandes and Kobbie Mainoo, offering depth and dynamism. There is interest from clubs like Juventus. So there is clearly potential there. But I look at him as a undervalued gem. He has been outshining Tyler Dibling in a way. And I say that because the fact that Tyler Dibling, his name seems to be thrown around a lot more. I'm not seeing this guy's name thrown around enough. I'm not saying we should sign a player based on how their name is thrown around, etc. But what I'm saying is the fact that he's going under the radar, and I like that. obviously Southampton are going down. 30 million quid, I think, gets him easily. You could even negotiate that further down. And I think it's a bargain for a player who fits this, who has shown to fit the system for the manager before. And I think because the fact he's had a year under his belt in the Premier League, I think it really adds to that. I think there will be a reluctance to play in the Championship from him. There will be an expected exodus. The likes of Ramsdale, Dibbling, even the likes of Kyle Walker-Peters. And I think this kind of position is one that United need to capitalise on. There is a planned overhaul at Southampton. They need to sell, and it would lower Fernandez's price, and it would give United the upper hand in negotiation. And I've said constantly that I don't want it to be similar to Ten Hag, where we're just signing the manager's old players. But the fact we're signing a player who's got a year under his belt in the Premier League for a relegated side and done well there, and it has really gone under the radar in people's eyes, I think it could really play well for United. I think he would slot into the midfield, provide energy, defensive cover, and progressive passing. He's familiar, obviously, like I said, with the system. And like I've said before, this system is quite specialist. So in that regard, I want United to sign players who fit. Are there any risks? He's had a lot of substitute appearances, but there's familiarity there. I do like him. He'd be a cheap bench option, because what United are lacking is not just legs currently in the starting 11. It's not just depth, it's also in the starting 11. But the fact that we don't have the depth, I think he could easily come in. You need these players. You need these £20 million cheap pickups who are going to do well for you no matter what, whether they're starters or whether they're bench options. And I think he could be that. Like I already said, I think Southampton are going to be the worst for it out of the relegated sides, but I think there's going to be a relegation fire sale with Southampton, and I think when you've got Ramsdale, Dibbling, and Fernandez as probably among the better performers, I don't see Southampton keeping them. So I think they are worth going in for. Like I've said, United's system requires a reliable goalkeeper, dynamic midfielder, and a direct attacking midfielder, or even a wing back. And I think of the three players mentioned, I think all three of them, there is a suitability there. United obviously are in 14th. There's a lack of cutting edge. We're not scoring a lot of goals. We're also, there are games where clearly we need a goalkeeper who can play out from the back, who's also a consistent shot stopper as well. And it's just a whole mess. In terms of cost, I think United need to obviously invest wisely this summer. They're running with a sell to buy mentality, and whether they win the Europa League or not, I think United obviously are going to need the money, obviously, from the likes of Anthony, Rashford, Sancho, all out on loan, and then players who are currently there right now, and even just getting their wages off the books. You can imagine how much they're paying of Sancho's wages and Rashford's wages, who are not playing for us. And then you've got Casemiro. Will he go? Will he stay? He's got high wages. Get them off the books as well. They really help. But I think if we're looking at, best case, you're probably seeing £75 million for the three players. 75, 80 million pounds for the three players. That's best case. That is, we're walking in as master negotiators from a position of strength. I don't think that's how much it will cost to buy those three players. I think it might be a little bit more, but not too much. 30 million quid a piece for each player, I think would be us getting absolutely shafted, depending. But I just think that there is a clear idea and a clear vision of the kind of players United want to sign. And I think buying players who are Premier League proven, young but could develop, or even just fit the system, I think works. Would I sign all three of them? I'm not sure. Um, I'm not, if United sign all three of them, I wouldn't be too disappointed. If United didn't sign any of them, I also wouldn't be too disappointed. Because it depends. Obviously, United might want in certain positions they might want a more proven name. They might want a proven goal, a more proven shot stopper instead of at the highest level instead of Ramsdale. They might want someone who can immediately just slot into either the 6 or 8 or whatever you want to call the midfield pivot or the one of the 10 positions. Whether they bring in, let's say, Paulinho from Bayern Munich, or they bring in Cunha or Mbermo, obviously more proven names. So it remains to be seen whether United sign these players. But I think of Southampton, I think those three are the ones potentially I could look at. I did mention at the start there was a name I wanted to bring up. I couldn't put him in because it would be cheating, which was Chelsea's Leslie Ogochukwu, who obviously was at Southampton on loan this season. I really like him. I've been banging his praises for about a year now because I thought he was, I think he's like the next like Amadou Onana. He's that athletic 6'8" hybrid for a big guy, strong, physical, but he's very good on the ball. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Like I said, my name is Julio. This is Red Bull Review, and I'll see you in the next one. Laters.